The Iliad is one of the greatest pieces of literature of all time. It is a story of a single man's rage, his transcendence into godhood to avenge his fallen comrade, and the dark side of this transformation. It is a book of heroism, tragedy, and war. In this 24-piece epic poem, there are many heroic figures and battles to draw upon in regards to recognizing fighting styles and combat related attributes. The Iliad is packed with symbolism, metaphors, and life teachings. The Homeric hymns were taught to children of very young age in ancient Greece for this very reason. Despite it being mythological in nature, it has great historic, linguistic, and esoteric value. Having a source from where we can decipher battle characteristics and qualities that the ancient Greeks held in the highest regard makes it extremely exciting to research. So, let's take a look. Now, the Iliad has several different characters and heroes that play different roles. I would place the main heroes of the Iliad into two categories: the war heroes like Ajax, Hector, or Diomedes, and the plot related characters like Helen, Paris, or Priam. Naturally, we're going to be taking a closer look at the heroes of battle. These main heroes are Ajax, the tower of the Achaeans, Diomedes, the technical master, Odysseus, the tactical mind, and Achilles, of the Achaeans, the greatest. Of course, let's not also forget Hector, the protector of Troy. Mind you, there are other heroes of battle that are brought up within the Iliad, like Meriones or Teucros, one that had a fighting style that resembled a dancer, and the other being an amazing archer. But neither of these are mentioned in length within the poem, as their fighting styles appear to be portrayed more so as a gimmick than anything else. So let's begin our analysis with Ajax, also known as Eas, the bulwark of the Achaeans. Ajax was a man of huge stature, incredible strength, and unyielding resilience. Ajax was neither the son of a god, nor was he particularly favored by any god. Still, he was the only fighter to participate in every single battle in the Iliad. Even when all hope looked lost for the Achaeans, he fought in the front lines of battle while also being their last line of defense. Ajax symbolizes physical and mental strength, resilience, and the will to fight and persevere. Next, we have Diomedes, one of the lesser known and extremely underrated heroes of the Iliad. Diomedes was the son of Tydeus and one of the more stoic and technical fighters of the Trojan War. Diomedes was not a demigod in blood, but he fought like a god in battle. In Rhapsody Epsilon, a rhapsody dedicated to the war feats of Diomedes, he inflicted enough damage to the Trojans that Hector himself had to go and ask from the women of Troy to offer sacrifices to Athena so she can stop his onslaught. But this was not enough. Athena heavily favored Diomedes and often gave him powers of godlike strength and fury. Diomedes is the only character in Hellenic mythological history to strike down two of the 12 Olympic gods on the same day. First, he struck down Aphrodite while she was trying to save her son from battle, and then he struck down the god of war himself, Ares, while he was fighting by Hector's side. Diomedes also showed his amazing set of skills when on a reconnaissance mission with Odysseus. There, he killed 15 men in a single bout, carrying nothing but his short sword. When Diomedes channeled divine fury, which was given to him by Athena, he remained calm, collected, and composed while fighting. He never once missed his target throughout that entire battle. His rage was expressed through combat. He didn't display the type of rage that engulfs the vessel and renders oneself incapable of coordinated and prolonged combat. Diomedes exemplified technique, skill, and expression of emotion within combat. Next, let's study Odysseus, the man of many schemes. Another favorite of Athena, Odysseus was a warrior and a tactician. Most know Odysseus from the other Homeric hymn, the Odyssey, but he also fought valiantly in the Iliad. In battle, Odysseus did not stand behind and give orders. He fought alongside the Achaean heroes in the front lines of battle. Odysseus knew when he needed to attack and when he needed to retreat. He used his commanding presence to instruct others on how to carry out the battle during the fight. He was cunning, deceptive, prudent, and brave. When Diomedes was stranded in battle and subsequently injured, Odysseus was the first one to charge in to save him. He was quickly surrounded, but was still able to fight his way out of the situation and save Diomedes in the process. He sustained injury to do so, but accomplished his goal and killed 6 enemy soldiers nonetheless. His backup, of course, Ajax, who was called upon prior to entering the uneven battle. Odysseus had anticipated that the fight would not go well. Odysseus chose his battles carefully and won them every time. Odysseus represented tactics, intelligence, and maneuverability. He had a clear mind, yet did not allow pure reason to dictate his actions, as his heroism was always prevalent. Despite his small stature, his superior mind and honed body allowed him to become a champion of the Achaeans. Then, of course, Achilles. Achilles, or as Homer calls him, the breaker of ranks, the greatest of the Achaeans, and the destroyer of cities, was the greatest fighter of the war and arguably of all time. It is important here to note that there's a common misconception that Achilles was so strong due to being a demigod or due to being dipped in the river Styx by his mother Thetis, making him impermeable to damage. So, firstly, the status of being a demigod did not in and of itself give anyone superpowers. Many demigods were killed by mere mortals within the Iliad. Even Sarpedon, the son of Zeus, was killed by Patroclus, who was a mere human. Secondly, the myth about the river Styx, where Achilles was dipped in order to gain impermeable skin, was one written during the Roman times by Statius and is contradicted within the Iliad, as Achilles had his forearm grazed by a dory thrown by Asteropaeus in Rhapsody 21, which caused Achilles' blood to be spilled. Achilles is the protagonist of the Iliad, and though we are always reminded of his martial prowess, we only see Achilles fight at the end of the narrative, where he demolishes the entire Trojan army and has them retreat back within their city walls. Afterwards, he also kills their leader Hector in a single rage-filled charge. The one characteristic that Homer assigns to Achilles most often is that of podas okis, or swift-footed. But of all the epithets that Homer could have used to characterize Achilles, the greatest fighter that was ever known, he chose to mention that his footwork was quick. In order to gain a better understanding of this choice, let's take a look at the word strategy in regards to etymology. Now, the word strategy comes from the Greek words stratos, which means army, and ago, which means to move. Therefore, strategy literally translates to how one moves his army. The ability to manipulate space in order to gain the advantage on your opponent is in fact footwork. As Bruce Lee himself stated, the principle of fighting is the art of mobility. To seek your target or to avoid being a target, proper footwork is good balance in action, which contributes to hitting power and avoidance of punishment. But it's not just the element of space that strategy refers to, it is also timing. It's not just where you move the army, but also when you move the army. The epithet assigned to Achilles, podarkis, or swiftfoot, took both timing and spacing into consideration. Achilles was in his essence a strategist. Other than a fighter, he was also the king and commander of the Myrmidon army, a fleet of 50 ships. His inept ability to strategize was not only shown in his physical prowess. When Agamemnon decided to apologize to Achilles for taking Briseis, the main factor in the feud that began Achilles' apostasy from the war, he sent Ajax, one that's defensive, and Odysseus, one that is tactical, to offer Achilles his maiden Briseis back, together with other spoils of war as a form of apology, so that Achilles can return to battle. What followed was a heated debate between Odysseus, known to be the greatest debater of the Achaeans, and Achilles in regards to whether or not the war should go on. Ajax also joined Odysseus in this debate, as he was a good friend of Achilles and was there to appeal to his emotions. However, Achilles was not going to budge. He rebutted Odysseus and took apart his arguments, while Ajax did little to convince Achilles after the fact. Achilles was not simply a warrior or a brute, as he's most commonly portrayed in popular media, and this debate proves exactly that. But in regards to combat, as mentioned earlier, Achilles was of legendary status. When his friend and kin Patroclus died, causing Achilles to re-enter the battle, he single-handedly routed the entire Trojan army. He killed so many people in that day that he managed to create a dam of bodies, halting an entire river with the corpses of his foes. Of course, Achilles also killed Hector of Troy, though this was not a long drawn out duel as it's most commonly portrayed. A single strike is all that Achilles needed in order to kill Hector, who was absolutely no match for Achilles. In fact, Hector was really no match for any of the aforementioned heroes. He is pretty much the odd one out here. He was neither of large stature like Ajax, nor was he proficient in combat like Diomedes. His tactics were proven faulty, as opposed to Odysseus, and his strategy was poor in comparison to Achilles. But what did Hector have that allowed him to fight against all these heroes to some degree of success? Well, that was the undying will and determination to protect his country. He endured a duel with Ajax, an almost fatal encounter with Diomedes, and several dangerous fights with Odysseus. Given the fact that the other heroes of Troy were nowhere near his league in terms of combat, it is all the more impressive, as he accomplished this with little to no support. What Homer displays with this character is how you can surpass overwhelming odds by sheer will and determination. When your back is against the wall and you have a sacred cause, you can accomplish impossible feats. Of course, that is if you don't get too cocky. The reason Hector was confronted and killed by Achilles was because Hector refused to retreat back within the city walls of Troy after killing Patroclus. He knew Achilles would come for him, but was confident he could overcome this challenge as well, a fateful hubris he would soon regret. Now, the outcome of the interaction between Achilles and Hector was quite easy to predict. But what about comparing the Achaean heroes to each other? How, for example, would Ajax fare against Diomedes or Odysseus? Well, lucky enough, that's something that we're going to get to know. Homer will have them face off in the funeral games that were held in honor of Patroclus. The first bout that we're going to get to see is a wrestling match between Odysseus and Ajax. That's right, a wrestling match where weight classes were completely disregarded. Odysseus was actually described as being barely tall enough to reach the shoulders of Ajax. But was Odysseus' lack of physical strength enough to provide an easy victory for Ajax? Wrestling as a sport is not just brute force, it's very tactical in nature, and Odysseus easily won the tactical side of the battle. When Ajax tried to lift Odysseus off the ground and pin him to the floor, Odysseus successfully defended against Ajax's grapple, causing the great Ajax to fall on his back, while Odysseus fell on top of him on his side. This fact, in and of itself, was an amazing victory for Odysseus. Now, after gaining this advantage, Odysseus couldn't capitalize, as he couldn't lift Ajax off the ground despite his best effort. Therefore, a draw was called to avoid a lengthy stalemate. But this wouldn't be the only opponent that Ajax would have to face.
Get ready for the next battle.
Ajax also fought against Diomedes in a bout of oplomachitiki, or weapon fighting. The conditions set by Achilles were these: whoever would touch the other's skin underneath the armor with their weapon would be declared the victor. Going into the battle, the match seemed even at first, but Diomedes' skill was soon to show. Ajax could only hit Diomedes' shield, but Diomedes was reaching over Ajax's shield and touching his throat with the point of his spear, which in a heated battle is crazy to even consider. This, of course, had the audience stricken in fear that he would accidentally kill Ajax, so they called for a stoppage of the bout and requested it to be deemed a draw. Achilles obliged out of respect for both contestants, but due to having a keener eye than the audience, he knew that Diomedes had won the match and awarded him the sword which was destined to the winner. So, what do these bouts show us? What do they tell us? From Odysseus versus Ajax, superior strength will lose to superior tactics. And this was not a far fetched idea in ancient Greece. A great example is Plutarch, when he mentioned that the Spartans do not inquire how many the enemy are, but where they are. Then, of course, from the bout of Ajax against Diomedes, we see that strength may seem evenly matched with technique by the untrained eye, but technique will always have the edge. Remember, Ajax also represented defense, while Diomedes is characterized by his high spirit and offensive approach from the epithets given to his character by Homer. As Sun Tzu states, security against defeat implies defensive tactics, but the ability to defeat the enemy means taking the offensive. But then what about Diomedes versus Odysseus? How would that play out? Well, the answer to this question would lie within the Odyssey. Upon the death of Achilles, it was deemed that the worthiest fighter would be chosen to take Achilles' weapons and armor. The recipient of this honor was Odysseus. Ajax was denied, and Diomedes was not even considered. All in all, what can we conclude from this? What were the qualities that the ancient Greeks valued the most in combat? Well, held in high regards, of course, was strength, defense, and resilience, the mental fortitude personified by Ajax. Then we have technique, offense, and the control or expression of one's emotions within battle, Diomedes. Above even that was tactical superiority, using the mind to trick and outmaneuver your opponents, Odysseus. And the greatest value of all, strategy, the ability to manipulate space and time via intelligent maneuverability using the values of all the heroes above, strength, technique, and tactics. This was Achilles, the greatest of the Achaeans. Of course, let's not forget the odd one out, Hector. If you have the will and determination, you can overcome obstacles far superior to your natural abilities. And if you fight for a noble cause, nothing can stop you. Just don't get too cocky with your success, as hubris brings forth nemesis. Now, what's crazy is that this hierarchy is actually confirmed if you take into account the number of epithets assigned to each hero within the Iliad. I've actually conducted a study on this, where all of the epithets were counted, both in repetition and in variety, allowing me to determine if the hierarchy that's shown in the epithets matches the hierarchy that's apparent within the narrative. Surprisingly enough, it actually does. Achilles has 26 characterizations with 206 mentions. Odysseus has 18 characterizations with 89 mentions. Then Diomedes has 12 characterizations with 68 mentions. And finally, Ajax has 11 characterizations with 41 mentions. Now, the most surprising one of all is Hector. He has 16 characterizations, but 163 mentions, which means that he's below Odysseus in regards to characterizations, but above Odysseus in regards to mentions. He is still below Achilles in both, and this actually shows within the narrative, because he fights against Odysseus, Diomedes, and Ajax to a degree of success that required that Achilles returns to battle in order to put a stop to his endless assault. Therefore, what this hierarchy shows us is that one begins with a strong foundation, which is strength and proper stature, then moves on to mastering technique, then to incorporating tactics, and finally working on footwork and mobility to build strategy, which is a natural progression. It's important here to mention that studying literature is what brought us to these conclusions. It's from these subtle hints that we gain a better understanding of how Greeks were taught in the art of battle. I hope you found this interesting, as more videos are soon to come. If you'd like to read this study and see the argumentation for yourself, you can find it in the description below where I've posted a link. If you have any other suggestions of literature that you'd like me to look into for a similar analysis, do let me know. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for future episodes. Until next time.